Hi everyone, welcome back. In today's session, we'll be discussing the story Discovering Tut. The saga continues by A.R. Williams. Discovering Tut is actually a story that is going to discuss the life of King Tut, the mysterious circumstances under which the king died, and the discoveries that were made through the mummified body of King Tut. Before I actually begin with the story, let me tell you that this story is a little complex. It's a little difficult story to understand. So we have to take it in three parts. In the first part, we'll be discussing about the life of King Tut. In the second part, we'll be discussing the mysterious circumstances under which he died. And in the third part, we will be discussing the discoveries that were made about King Tut. King Tut. So through the story, we get to know that King Tut was also given two names, King Tutankhamun and King Tutankhaten. King Tutankhamun, why? Because King Tut was a worshipper of the god of sun and air, that was Amun. Amun was known to be the Egyptian god of sun and air. That is why, because King Tut used to worship that god, he was given the title Tutankhamun. And Tutankhaten, why? Because Aten was the Egyptian god who was known to be the disk of the sun, and it was also worshipped by the Egyptians. Next thing we know that King Tut was actually only 11 years old when he was crowned to be the pharaoh of Egypt. Pharaoh is a term that we use for the Egyptian kings. He was born in 1341 BC, I guess, and then eventually it was known that he died in the year 1321 BC. So King Tut was very young when he had actually become the king and the pharaoh of Egypt, and so he was very popular. But because of uncertain reasons, mysterious circumstances, he died really early. It is a very basic tradition and the custom of the Egyptians that when their king died, his body was mummified and it was put in a coffin along with precious stones. Why? Precious stones and coins were two important things that were placed in the coffin of the king, because the Egyptians believed in the concept of afterlife. They believed that when their king actually died, he also had a life after that, and he might be needing his coins, his precious stones, his jewelries in his afterlife situation. Now, this was the entire story about King Tut, how he was born, and he was the pharaoh of Egypt. Now, the mysterious circumstances in which he died was actually a suspense for the entire world and the society. And in the year 1922, Howard Carter, who was actually a British archaeologist, he decided that he will study the mummified body of King Tut. Now, it was a very strange decision. Why? Because King Tut's body was never discovered, and Howard Carter, he made a very bold attempt to discover his mummified body. Now, when he discovered the mummified body, he saw that on the coffin, it was written that whosoever disturbs the body of the mummy, he will also die in mysterious circumstances. Initially, Howard Carter was a little nervous, but then he thought that for the mankind, and being an archaeologist, archaeologists are people who study past history, let me tell you. So being a archaeologist, it was his moral responsibility to discover the mummified body. Eventually, when the mummified body was discovered, it was seen that the body of King Tut was sticking to the coffin very badly, and that was because of raisins. Raisins are sticky substances that are found on the trees, and because of the raisins, the body of King Tut was very badly stuck on the coffin, and it was very difficult to detach the body from the coffin. Now, Howard Carter said that if any thief or a robber discovers the body, he's going to mutilate the body in a very bad way, because the thieves and the robbers are mostly interested in the materialistic things. But Howard Carter says that because it is his duty towards the society to discover the body of King Tut, he will actually have to detach the limbs of King Tut's body so that he can actually discover and know certain unknown facts about King Tut. Next, we get to know that King Tut's body, it was actually buried in a 3-layered coffin. And the first, 3-layered gold coffin, actually, if I may emphasize, 3-layered gold coffin of, he was buried in that coffin. The first layer of the coffin, it was covered with olive leaves, corn flowers and lotus petals. Yes, the first layer of the gold coffin of King Tut, it was full of olive leaves, corn flowers and lotus petals. Now, after discovering this, Howard Carter made his, rest. He rested the body of King Tut back into its coffin after discovering some things about him. Then in the year 1968, an anatomy professor again decided to do a study of King Tut's body. And the important achievement that was made by the anatomy professor was that he found that inside King Tut's body, his breastbones and ribs were actually missing. Yes, two important things. The breastbones and ribs were missing from the body of King Tut. Then again in the year 2005, Simon was actually a company that launched and discovered CT scan. CT scan was a very new formula that had been invented in the year 2005, and Simon was also interested to know more about King Tut, so he actually donated CT scan, which was a machine, to the archaeologists to discover certain more unknown facts about King Tut. And through the CT scan, it was found out that King Tut, he did not die under any mysterious circumstances, rather he had a very natural death, and that he died in the year 1321 BC. So 3 important things are to be noted in this chapter. The first important thing is first discovery that was made by Howard Carter in the year 1922. What did he discover? That the body was badly stuck to its coffin because of raisins. Next, the body of King Tut was placed in the 3-layered gold coffin, and the first layer of the gold coffin consisted of olive leaves, corn flowers and lotus petals. The next discovery was made in 1968 by an anatomy professor. The anatomy professor believed that the breastbones and ribs from King Tut's body were actually missing. And the third discovery that was made about King Tut was in the year 2005 by a CT scan machine that was gifted by the Simon Company. And the CT scan machine proved that King Tut, he did not die under any mysterious circumstances, rather he had a very natural death. This is all about King Tut and the discoveries that were made about him. The first thing I told you about King Tut, again I would like to emphasize, is his background story. His grandfathers was Amenhotep III and Amenhotep IV. King Tut worshipped the Egyptian god Amun and Aten. That is why he was also known as Tutankhamun and Tutankhaten. Next, he was very rich, he was a very powerful king, and he died very early. I mean, he was only 11 years old when he was crowned as the pharaoh of Egypt, but because of a natural death, he did not have many years to enjoy his kingship. The discoveries that were made by the scientists and the discoverers are indeed very important, and you also have to underline and understand the life of King Tut. Also, I would like to emphasize in this chapter is about the traditions of Egyptians. I'm sure you must have seen the movie Mummy. Yes, we all did see the movie Mummy. I think it had 2 parts, part 1 and part 2. And through that movie, we know the life of, the mummies and the Egyptian kings, how after their death, they were buried in the coffins and they were placed in the pyramids. Then also we get to know that the Egyptians believed in the concept of afterlife, and they believed that a person should not be disturbed in his afterlife. Hence that, remember that quote on the coffin of King Tut, that whosoever touches the coffin or the body of King Tut, he will die under mysterious circumstances. but it was only a sad story. Not many people died after opening his coffin, I believe. And next is that they really buried all the precious stones and coins and jewelries along with the body of their king, because they thought that the king might need those things in his afterlife. Again, I have to tell you that materialism was something that the ancient Egyptians actually associated themselves with. They were materialistic in the fact that they placed all the material things along with the body of King Tut. But there is also one more thing. When a certain body is being placed to rest, do you think it is very important for us to take out that body, take out his limbs and discover that? I mean, that questions our morality as individuals. Yes, it is very important to discover certain things about our past history. But I also believe that a person who has actually died, he deserves rest in peace. His body should not be touched, his body should not be discovered. Yes, Howard Carter discovered for a very genuine reason, but I believe that even that body deserves a little peace. And we humans are so selfish that because in order to become more popular and to know about our past history, we disturb a person even in his afterlife. So this chapter questions our materialism with our moralism. Should our morality be, is morality more important, or is our attachment with materialistic goods more important? So this chapter is going to discuss with you your materialism versus your moralism. This is it again for today, Discovering Tut. I told you all again, the life of King Tut and the discoveries 1922, 1968 and 2005 are very, very important. This chapter is a little complicated, but if you remember the dates, if you remember the discoveries that were made, and you remember a little about King Tut, you will be able to crack this chapter. Please like, subscribe our channel. It is very important. Thank you so much. Keep motivating us. Bye.